Well, the Hempstead Plains was part of a huge tall grass prairie back in the time when the Native Americans lived here over 400 years ago. 40,000 acres all across the middle of Nassau County. And so when the colonists came, they found this wonderful field of grasses, and they thought it was a great place to settle. So they brought their livestock and they brought their farming equipment, and they started to farm the land and build their villages and towns and things like that. And so the Hempstead Plains got used as a big development area for Nassau County. And then in the early 1900s, it became the cradle of aviation when the early American flights took off, such as Charles Lindbergh in 1927 when he flew across the Atlantic Ocean. And then gradually more villages and towns grew up along the edges of the plains, like Plainview and Plain Edge, and Garden City came along in the late 1800s when Alexander Stewart purchased about 7,000 acres and built the city of Garden City. And Floral Park and East Meadow, these are all villages that were built along the edge of the plains, and so the plains got eaten up, and today there's very little left. There's 19 acres here at Nassau Community College, and there's another about 25 acres across the street on the south side of Charles Lindbergh Boulevard, and it's just almost all gone. The Hempstead Plains, like I said, was 40,000 acres in the middle of Nassau County, so this is all that's left, and this is like right in the middle of that big area there. Well, we've seen a lot of birds, obviously, and especially in the migration season, in the fall, the hawks come through. So not only do we have our red-tailed hawk, which is a common resident, but we have American kestrels, which are a falcon, a small falcon. We have merlins, which are another medium-sized falcon, and even the peregrine falcon will come through at times. The red fox, which is known on the north shore of Long Island, will come through occasionally, and we don't usually see it, but we see examples of that has been here, and like tracks in the snow, and the animals scat and so forth. We have little mice and meadow voles, and lots of beautiful insects and butterflies, including the monarch butterfly. So there's a lot to look at when you go out for a walk. Well, the native plants are the really important ones, especially the native grasses. We call them the warm season bunch grasses because they characterize a tall grass prairie, and they're the same grasses that you would see if you went out to the Midwest and walked in the true prairies of the Great Plains out there. We have our habitat is basically the same as that. So our tall bunch grasses, our native bunch grasses, include switchgrass, little blue stem grass, big blue stem grass, Indian grass, which is a favorite of mine, broom sedge, and there's another one called purple top, which gets to be about 6 feet tall in the fall, and those are the characteristic grasses that you find on a tall grass prairie. Nice. Well, a tall grass prairie or any grassland habitat in today's world has to be managed. If it's not taken care of properly, it will actually evolve by a process called ecological succession back into a shrubland and then into a forest. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you have to take care, you have to manage any kind of grasslands or prairies. They've all been disturbed to the point that they can't exist on their own anymore unless they are enabled to be burned on a regular basis. And since we don't do that in our societies anymore, we don't do burns, natural burns anyway, we have to provide other means, manual labor especially, in order to keep the prairies as a grassland. I started here in 2001 as the conservation project manager, but before that we had already saved the land back in 1988 when a botanist came over here and they discovered a globally endangered plant species growing here called sandplain gerardia. And we actually were able to have the college save the land because of that plant, and because this is a really vulnerable and rare and endangered habitat, basically. So we worked with the Nature Conservancy back then, and then in 2001 we formed Friends of Hempstead Plains. So I've been working here ever since. Well, that's a really good question. We work mainly with volunteers, and so the volunteers like yourself who come out on our volunteer work days to help us with our habitat management, these volunteers are really important to us. We don't have a big budget, so we can't buy heavy equipment to do the work out there, so we do most of our work with hand labor. In other areas, people could help us by spreading the word of the importance of the prairie and the importance of our habitat here, and get people to come and visit to see what we have here. We have this wonderful little education center where we can have classes and programs and things like that. And so we just want people to know that this is a special habitat and it's worth saving, and it's not only for people, but also for the native plants and animals that depend upon it. If this property were gone, if we lost all our Hempstead Plains, we would lose the native plants as well as all the native animals that depend upon this.